In the early decades of the 18th century, the vast and fertile plains of Bengal, renowned for their abundance, prosperity, and vibrant culture, found themselves stalked by a growing shadow. This shadow came not from distant lands, but from the heart of the Indian subcontinent itself, borne by the relentless hooves of the Maratha cavalry. Known in Bengal as the Borgis, these raiders swept across the countryside, leaving devastation and fear in their wake. To truly understand the impact of the Borgi raids, one must first journey into the complex political and social tapestry of the time, where empires clashed, ambition drove men to desperate deeds, and the fate of millions hung in the balance. The 18th century marked a period of profound change for the Indian subcontinent. The Mughal Empire, once the unchallenged master of the region, had begun to splinter under the weight of internal dissent and external threats. As the central authority waned, regional powers asserted themselves with increasing confidence. Among these were the Marathas, a confederacy of warrior states whose power and influence grew rapidly in western and central India. Under the leadership of figures like Raghuji Bhonsle, the Maratha armies developed a reputation for their highly mobile cavalry, capable of striking deep into enemy territory with little warning and vanishing before a counterattack could be mustered. The Marathas were not content with consolidating power in their heartlands. Their ambitions drew them eastward towards the lush and wealthy province of Bengal. Bengal, at this time, was governed by Nawab Alivardi Khan, a shrewd and resourceful leader who had seized power through force and political maneuvering. Alivardi Khan's rule was marked by efforts to maintain autonomy from both the declining Mughals and the encroaching Marathas, a delicate balancing act that would soon be put to the test. The Marathas' interest in Bengal was not solely motivated by conquest. Their campaigns were also driven by the desire to extract tribute, known as chauth, a tax amounting to a quarter of the revenues, intended to finance their expanding military machine and reward their soldiers. The Marathas demanded that Bengal pay this tribute, but Alivardi Khan steadfastly refused, wary of setting a precedent that would undermine his authority and impoverish his realm. Thus began a decade-long series of incursions that would come to be remembered as the Borgi raids. Beginning in 1741, waves of Maratha cavalry, led by commanders such as Bhaskar Pandit and later Raghuji Bhonsle himself, descended upon Bengal. They struck swiftly and unexpectedly, often targeting the richest and most populous districts. The raiders looted towns and villages, seized grain and valuables, burned homes, and took captives. The very name Borgi became synonymous with terror, as stories of their brutality spread from village to village. For the people of Bengal, these were years of unrelenting fear and hardship. The Borgi's tactics were designed to sow chaos and break the will of the population. They avoided fortified cities, preferring instead to raid the open countryside where the vast majority of people lived and worked. The impact was devastating. Crops were destroyed, markets disrupted, and entire villages depopulated as people fled into forests or sought refuge in towns. Famine and disease soon followed, compounding the misery. It is said that such was the terror inspired by the Borgis that mothers began to sing lullabies warning their children to behave, lest the Borgis come for them, an echo of dread that lingered long after the raids had ceased. The Nawab, Alivardi Khan, was not blind to the suffering of his people. He mounted a determined defense, rallying his own forces and fortifying key positions. But the Marathas' mobility and ruthlessness made them a difficult foe. Despite several hard-fought battles, including notable engagements at Katwa and Burdwan, the Nawab struggled to stem the tide of raids. Each year, as the monsoon rains ended and the roads became passable, the Borgis would return, unstoppable, insatiable, and seemingly invincible. Desperation began to set in. The economic toll of the raids was immense. Bengal's famed prosperity, built on its thriving agriculture and trade, was steadily eroded. The countryside became a patchwork of burned-out villages and abandoned fields. Merchants and artisans, the lifeblood of Bengal's urban centers, found their livelihoods shattered. The constant threat of violence undermined confidence in the Nawab's rule, and the social fabric of the province began to fray. By 1751, after 10 years of relentless warfare and destruction, a weary and battered Bengal reached a turning point. Recognizing that continued resistance would only bring further suffering, Alivardi Khan entered into negotiations with the Marathas. A treaty was signed, under which Bengal agreed to pay the chauth demanded by the Marathas in exchange for an end to the raids. This agreement brought a measure of peace, but at a steep price. Bengal's autonomy had been compromised, and the scars of the Borgi raids would not soon heal. The legacy of the Borgi raids extends far beyond the immediate devastation they caused. In the collective memory of Bengal, the Borgis became symbols of chaos and suffering. The phrase Borgi e deshe, the Borgis have come to our land, became a byword for disaster, echoing in folk songs, tales, and lullabies. The trauma of those years lived on, shaping the fears and anxieties of generations. On a broader scale, the raids had profound political and economic consequences. The weakening of Bengal's economy and the erosion of the Nawab's authority created an opening for other powers to exploit. Just a few years after the end of the Borgi raids, in 1757, the British East India Company defeated Nawab Siraj-ud-Dowlah, the successor of Alivardi Khan, at the Battle of Plassey. This victory marked the beginning of British dominance in Bengal, a turn of events made possible, in part, by the damage inflicted by the Borgis. The story of the Borgi raids is thus a tale of ambition and resistance, of suffering and survival. It is a reminder of how the ambitions of empires and the calculations of rulers can reverberate through the lives of ordinary people, leaving marks that endure long after the armies have departed. Even today, the memory of the Borgis lingers in the cultural consciousness of Bengal, a testament to the resilience of a people who endured unspeakable hardship and rebuilt their lives in the aftermath. And as we look back on those tumultuous years, we are reminded of the fragility of peace and prosperity, and the ever-present potential for history to be shaped by the clash of arms and the march of ambition. The episode also offers a window into the dynamics of 18th century India, a land where the collapse of old certainties and the rise of new powers set the stage for further upheaval and transformation. The Borgi raids were not an isolated event, but part of a larger pattern, a prelude to the even greater changes that would sweep across the subcontinent in the decades to come. In the end, the story of the Borgis is not just a story of violence and loss, but also one of endurance and adaptation. For in the face of adversity, the people of Bengal found ways to survive, to preserve their culture, and to pass down the lessons of the past to those who would come after. It is a story that continues to resonate, inviting us to reflect on the forces that shape our world and the ways in which ordinary people navigate the storms of history.